Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 33rd chapter of Inheritance, written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Izuku didn't lose his arm! Yay! And it seems that all is well even though Ida has vanished. It seems that his recovery has given him more questions than answers. Will they be answered? Let's find out after the trigger warnings. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game and indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. Class 1A chooses their hero names. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 33. Mind control? Izuku had so many questions. That's a matter for later. I would like to know what exactly exploded when you were being held by Shigaraki. There was a strange damage to the bar, but no evidence left behind to explain it. Sir said, before you were healed by Recovery Girl, you said something about an explosion, but it didn't make a lot of sense. We didn't ask for further details because of your condition and your need for rest, but now we'd like you to clarify. I'm not really sure I can, Izuku confessed, thinking back to the incredible pressure that had built up inside of him. I remember being scared, and really, really angry, and in so much pain that I couldn't think. I punched Shigaraki a couple of times to get him to let go of my arm, and I hit his arm to keep him from grabbing me again. I'm pretty sure I broke his arm. One for All was crackling around me, even though I don't remember deciding to use it. That makes sense so far, All Might encouraged with a nod. Izuku's father put a hand on his son's shoulder to ground him in the present while Izuku relived it in his memory. That's when it happened. I felt like I was going to pass out or throw up or both. Everything inside me was just boiling. All for one, being alive, the shouting and the pain and the confusion and the blood all felt like they were all causing pressure to build up inside me. And when it got too much, it just went boom. Boom? Sir asked with raised eyebrows. Boom, Izuku confirmed. There was just kind of this pulse that pushed out of me in every direction. And there were black streaks shooting everywhere, but I couldn't tell what it was, and it disappeared right away. Maybe I imagined them? The force of it blew out the door, wrecked the tables, and knocked back Kurogiri and Shigaraki. That's when Kurogiri opened up the hole in the floor and told me to go. Very strange, Sir mused. I wonder if it's some kind of new quirk we've never learned about. Because you've never been in a situation dire enough to trigger it. The USJ was pretty dire, Izuku pointed out. Yes, but those were slightly different circumstances. There were others there to help. And you had some modicum of control over the outcome of things at the time, Sir pointed out. Well, if having part of my body disintegrated is what takes to trigger it, then I hope I never have to use it again. Izuku said with a huff. There's not really a way to find out for sure without a duplication of the event, is there? All Might asked. We're not doing that, Izuku's dad said with finality. No, we are not, Sir agreed fervently. At this point, it's just a theory anyway. Unless something similar happens again, then we can look at it more closely. It's puzzling, but not a high priority. Right now, we need to focus on finding out where they've taken All for One and locating and capturing Kurogiri. Do you have any other questions for us? All Might asked. Just one, Izuku said. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? All Might and his father looked completely baffled by the sudden change of subject. Sir simply smiled serenely, knowing that this was Izuku's way of letting him know that he was really going to be fine. "What?" his father finally asked, sounding as though he didn't want to ask. "A stick," Izuku said with a weak grin. His father rolled his eyes, and All Might looked at Sir as if to say, "I blame you for this." Sir and All Might left shortly afterwards, and Izuku cooked himself and his father a large meal for dinner and went to bed early. Thankfully, his night was free of nightmares. The following day ended up being grey and rainy, and Izuku was surprised when Ida was just passing through the gate when his father dropped him off in front of the school. Ida was covered in a rain poncho, with galoshes large enough to accommodate his extra-large calves. Izuku wondered if it was to avoid getting water in his engines, but missed the opportunity to ask when Ida greeted him. He lifted his umbrella over his head and called out to Ida. "Good morning, Midoriya. You're here earlier than usual. One should always give oneself extra time for their commute on days with inclement weather. There are bound to be delays in transit on days like today." Ida's voice sounded as robust and chipper as usual, but there was something missing about him. It wasn't anything he could really pinpoint, but he seemed a little too Ida. Like, over the top even for him. Izuku fell into step beside him, having to jog a bit to keep up with the other boys' longer strides. "Yeah," Izuku said, eyeing him warily. "That, and Recovery Girl wants to see me before class starts to give me a checkup." He didn't mention that if the press had been waiting, his father had been prepared to drive him around the back to the staff entrance. Perhaps the early arrival mixed with the bad weather had been a blessing. Ida paused briefly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Izuku said, waving it away, then speeding up as Ida resumed walking. "I'm more worried about you." "There's nothing to worry about here," Ida said, slicing the air in a way that called to mind an umpire calling a runner as safe. "Ida, you left the sports festival before the second event, even though you could have advanced. Then you didn't answer anyone's texts or join the group chat." "Ah, yes. There was a family emergency. My brother was injured while on duty and in hospital. I rushed to be with my family, but he's out of danger now. I hear congratulations are in order. You won the sports festival. What a splendid... That's not important," Izuku insisted as they reached the school and paused in the entryway to hang their wet things on the hooks there. "Your brother was injured? I didn't see anything on the news. I looked, because I was worried when someone said you had a family emergency." The fact that Ida seemed to know that Izuku won, but not that he'd been kidnapped, set off alarm bells. Ida was usually the best informed of anyone when it came to news having to do with the school. If his brother was truly alright, would he be so out of the loop? "Your concern is very touching," Ida said, actually looking like he meant it. "My family asked that it be kept quiet for a couple days, so we could determine how serious his injuries are and prepare for the onslaught of media attention. They'll likely make an announcement later today." "But you say he's out of danger?" Izuku pressed. "Yes, of course. I wouldn't be here otherwise," Ida said, not sounding as convincing this time. "Didn't you say you needed to see Recovery Girl?" "I do, but... Are you sure you're okay? That's really scary to go through. If you want to talk about it, I have some experience in scary things. And I'm a good listener," Izuku asked, not able to shake off the idea that something was still bothering Ida. "I really do appreciate it, Midoriya," Ida said. "I'll let you know if I decide I want to talk about it." "It doesn't have to be me," Izuku said, "but I'm here." "Thank you. Now please don't neglect your own health to worry about me. I'll see you in class. Try not to be late. As class rep, it's up to you to set the example for the rest of the class." Izuku smiled because it seemed like Ida wanted him to, and nodded. "I'll try." He watched Ida stride stiffly toward the stairwell, and didn't go to Recovery Girl's office until Ida was out of sight. "This will scar, unfortunately," Recovery Girl told him. "It will probably fade over time, but for now, this is as good as it's going to get." "I'll take a scar over a stump any day," Izuku said with feeling. He explained to her about the brace on his arm slipping down, and she promised to look into it, but in the meantime she pinned a piece of gauze to the top of one side of the tube of neoprene, and looped it over his opposite shoulder before pinning the other end of the gauze to the back of the tube. It didn't look great, but it was at least effective at keeping it up, like a pair of suspenders might hold up pants. Once he put his shirt back on, it wasn't even visible, though it did feel weird. She advised him that long sleeves with the brace over it was probably the best answer for the short term. Once he got a clean bill of health and instructions to wear the brace, especially when exercising, he went back to class with time to spare. Most of the students had arrived early to check on Izuku and Ida, and since Izuku hadn't been there when they arrived, they crowded around Ida to find out what had happened. Izuku could see he was in the midst of telling the rest of the class the same story he'd told Izuku. He was interested when he saw that Uraraka didn't look convinced by his upbeat attitude either. Once Aizawa arrived, they settled down, especially when everyone noticed that he had Ka-chan with him. To the casual observer, he looked defiant and unapproachable, with his slouch and having his hands jammed in his pockets of his sagging pants and his trademark sneer. To Izuku's trained eye, he looked slightly embarrassed and uncertain as he came into the room, his eyes darting around to try and gauge everyone's reaction. "Starting today, Bakugo is restarting the hero course," Aizawa said blandly. "Welcome back, Ka-chan," Izuku told him loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I've got the notes for anything you missed." Ka-chan locked eyes with Izuku and nodded almost imperceptibly. He moved to take his seat and Kirishima spoke up too. His voice wasn't its usual loud and enthusiastic tone, but it wasn't mocking or unkind either. "Welcome back, man. Nice job at the sports festival." "Welcome back," a couple of others muttered, possibly a little grudgingly. "You should join the class group chat," Mina whispered to him, even though there were 2 rows of seats between them. "Settle down," Aizawa said with disinterest. "First things first. Midoriya, since you missed the medal presentation, I have your medal for safekeeping. You can see me after class to collect it." Izuku nodded, somewhat surprised when Bakugo turned in his seat to look at him inquiringly. "Where were you anyway?" "Got snatched by villains," Izuku said. "I'll fill you in later." Ka-chan's eyes widened at that, but he turned back around in his seat and paid attention when Aizawa started talking again. Izuku glanced back to where Ida sat and saw him looking confused. Maybe about the news of Izuku missing the medal presentation? "Today, you'll be doing something very important," Aizawa announced. The door slid open instantly, as if Midnight had been waiting outside for her cue. "Choosing your hero names!" she cried out as she came in. The class broke into excited cheers at this news. "Consider your hero name carefully, because while it can be changed later, some names will stick and you'll be stuck with them. Right, Eraser?" The class's eyes shifted to their teacher, who was stepping into his puffy yellow sleeping bag. He paused as if thinking about something, then shrugged. "I'm terrible at this sort of thing, so I'll leave you in Midnight's capable hands. She'll help you decide if what you choose is appropriate." "This is who they chose to decide appropriateness?" Izuku whispered to himself in disbelief. Next to him, Sero snickered. Midnight handed them all whiteboards and dry erase markers to write with, then returned to the front of the room. Your hero name should be something personal, that inspires you and tells others what kind of hero you want to be, she told them. I'm sure most of you have been thinking about this, at least since you got accepted into UA. Izuku's mind went into panic mode. With all the training and pushing himself to get this far, he hadn't really thought about what his hero name should be. At least, not since he was a little kid, back when his mother was still alive. He had vague recollections of playing heroes with her and thinking up all sorts of variations of All Might, so he could be just like his favorite hero. That seemed a little childish and unrealistic now. His mother had even called him Small Might a few times as a hero name when they played, but there was no way he could go with that, even to honor her. His eyes cast around the room, feeling increasingly nervous, but then noticed not as many people were as busy scribbling out their answer as he expected. Ida was staring blankly at his whiteboard, lost in thought, and so were a couple of others. There was some low talking around the room as others discussed it. Does anyone want to go first? It was silent for a few moments before Aoyama stood up and made his way to the front with a flamboyance and self-assurance that Izuku found both odd and was somewhat envious of. Then he flipped his whiteboard for everyone to see, and Izuku's mouth dropped open. He could hear quiet murmurs around the room as they all read what he had written. I cannot stop twinkling. He even embellished it with doodles of stars with rays of light around them. What the hell is that about? Karchan said quietly to himself. Izuku could only agree. It wasn't a name, it was a sentence. Midnight said, apparently unfazed. I can see what you're going for here, but... She took the whiteboard and began erasing and rewriting as she spoke. If you remove this and change this to a contraction by putting an apostrophe here, there, that's better. She turned the sign back toward the class and showed them that it now read, Can't stop twinkling. How was that any better? Still, Izuku supposed he had at least thought of something. The rest of the class seemed as incredulous as he felt, staring in disbelief. Ashido jumped up next and bounced her way to the front. I'm the acid-shooting hero alien queen! Izuku didn't mean to facepalm so hard that others could hear the slap, but he couldn't help it. Like the American horror movie. Too grotesque. Try again, Midnight told her brusquely. Ashido's lower lip jutted out in a disappointed pout as she went back to her seat. May I go next? Suyu asked politely. Surely she wouldn't choose something bizarre, Izuku thought. The girl with the frog-like quirk had always seemed very pragmatic and outspoken. This is the name I picked out when I was younger, but I've always liked it. She turned her card, which read, Rainy Day Hero, Froppy. The class as a whole breathed a sigh of relief. That's perfect! Friendly and approachable sounding, Midnight approved. Suyu took her seat, looking pleased and relieved. After that, others seemed to find their courage or think of names they liked, because they strode to the front one after the other. Shoji was Tentacle. Jiro decided on Earphone Jack. Ashido tried again and got approval for Pinky. Then Karchan got up and strode to the front, slamming down his card to show everyone. Izuku facepalmed again, dragging his gloved hand down his face to cover his mouth. King Explosion Murder! Even the handwriting looked violent. Izuku sighed. That's not going to work, Midnight said flatly. What? Karchan groused, then, fine. He flipped the board around and erased something, then flipped it to show Lord Explosion Murder. No, Midnight said in immediate rejection. Why? Karchan demanded angrily. Because it has the word murder in it? Izuku finally suggested, breaking the disbelieving silence. Yeah, that's a villain's name, Kirishima ventured. Go with something fun like Blasty. Shut up, weird hair, Karchan told him rudely. Kirishima just grinned. M'explodey, Kaminari teased. There were a couple of other teasing suggestions just because it was funny, then Midnight sent him back to his seat to rethink. Kirishima was the next to reveal his, which Midnight recognized immediately as paying homage to the pro-hero Crimson Riot. Red Riot. Kaminari seemed confident in his choice of Charge Bolt, which Izuku thought was pretty cool. Todoroki seemed to be completely apathetic when he held up his sign to show them his. Shoto. Izuku was getting a headache. Uraraka was extra pink cheek when she revealed her hero name, Uravity, which Izuku thought was both clever and cute, which matched her personality. Ojiro followed with the apt Tailman, and then Tokoyami revealed his, Tsukuyomi, both of which Izuku approved. When Ida finally went up to the front, he was excited and interested to hear what name he'd come up with, but Ida looked stoic as he flipped his card and it simply said, Tenure on it. Another one? Midnight asked as if in complaint. I think those of you using your actual names are going to end up regretting it. Luckily, this isn't necessarily a permanent choice, so there's still time for you to change it. Yaoyorozu chose Creati for her name, which was well received, and Hagakure's Invisible Girl was predictable but adequate. Mineta earned approval with Grape Juice, even though it sounded a bit weird to Izuku. He remembered then that he meant to talk to Aizawa about Mineta's behaviour at the sports festival. The very shy coder seemed extremely relieved when everyone liked Anima. And Sato went with Sugar Man, which was cool since his power relied on the strength that sugar gave him. Once Sero chose Cellophane, they were almost finished. Just 2 left now, Midnight said, sounding expectant. Izuku cringed as all eyes turned to him, and also Karchan, who was rethinking a name that didn't include the word murder. I haven't really been able to decide, Izuku demurred, but I've narrowed it down a bit. Come on up and show me what you've got, Midnight suggested. Maybe we could help you decide. Just go with Broccoli Boy, Kaminari called out as Izuku made his way up to the front. Almost everyone laughed, including Karchan, who had gotten his share of teasing earlier. Even Midnight gave a chuckle and the good-natured encouragement. Izuku nervously showed Midnight his board, which had 3 names written on it in tiny letters. She said as she read them silently. Then she pointed to the middle one and said, None of them are bad, but I think the meaning of this one might confuse people. Izuku used his marker to strike out the name Tribune. This one is also good. So good that it's already taken by another hero. Though he lives in the United States and not Japan, you could still use it, especially since he's not super well known. Izuku studied that one, not quite ready to strike it off yet. What about the last one? I like it. It's powerful sounding and forthright. That one gets my vote. Izuku nodded, still not completely sure, but comforted by the fact that it didn't have to be his permanent hero name. It could just be a placeholder for now. With a deep breath, he wiped Tribune and Beacon from the board, then turned it to face the class before he could change his mind.
Vanguard,
Sato read out loud.
Vanguard,
Uraraka repeated, testing the feel of saying it.
I like it.
Good one, Midoriya, Jiro said approvingly. Izuku shot a glance over to Kachan, who for once didn't look derisive. He looked impressed. There was a first time for everything, Izuku supposed. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. Bakugo is back. Ida is being weird, and Izuku's hero name is Inspired. So many voices I got to do. I'll admit I was kind of missing doing the Bakugo voice. I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. Feel free to tell me about it below. All credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction. A is for AV71 on AO3. I would highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel and you hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah.